People always ask how I balance my family life with 400 shows a year. I'm just doing what I love with the people I love. It's my magic life.
I like Wes Iseli. I like everything about him.
All right, in today's episode, we have one of today's top foot doctors. This guy's written books about feet. He's published peer-reviewed research papers, and he's even helped Olympians get back up and running. With all of this in his intro, I still haven't scratched the surface on everything that this guy has done and is capable of doing. So, everybody, let's welcome Dr. Colin
Dombroski.
There you go. All right. How are you doing, Doc?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks so much for having me on your show.
Dude, you know what? Your people reached out to me. First of all, thank you for being on. And your people reached out to me, and it was just perfect timing because I have a foot problem that is bugging me to death, and it's being a hindrance on our marriage. So you couldn't have.
Not. Oh my goodness.
You couldn't have come at a perfect time. But it's up to you, man. Do you want to get it? Do you want to get into my prognosis, or do you want to talk about all the 50 million other things we have to talk about? What do you want to start with?
Oh, let's totally dig into your stuff.
All right.
Tell me what happened.
All right, we'll dig into me, and then we'll get into all your credits and all the cool stuff.
Sure.
So I was at a church event with my little girl, and I was playing. It was kind of like soccer, dodgeball, something, and I had dress shoes on. Mm-hmm. And my right foot went downhill. And I went to pick up the ball to throw a girl out, to throw somebody out or whatever. And before I realized, I heard a pop. I heard something before I even realized. I was still trying to put weight on my foot. But my toes had curled. I don't know how you explain it. Pinky toe, big toe. If I'm looking at my right hand, those pinky toe to middle finger toe curled up underneath of me and touched my heel on my shoe. I don't know how much it actually curled up underneath of me. But my big toe and my pointer finger toe was still sticking out, straight. It was just those three toes curled underneath. And immediately I'm very, what am I in games?
He doesn't take pain very well. Is that what you're saying? He has a very
low
tolerance
I'm
for
very,
pain?
in games.
Oh,
I'm very
he's
competitive.
very
I couldn't think of the word. And I
Gotcha.
immediately just quit the game and just hopped off the field. And I'm very competitive, so it hurt right there. And my foot swole up. I went to the doctor the next day. He said, oh, yeah, it's definitely broken. Let's take x-rays and find out. X-rays showed nothing. They gave me a boot, said 3 weeks later, if it's not better, we'll send you to a specialist. 3 weeks later, it wasn't any better. Specialist said, well, I looked at the x-ray. Nothing's broken. It should be better in 3 weeks. I said, if it's... so how will I know if it gets better? You'll know, and you'll be able to test it out. You'll be able to try it. You'll know when to stop. And I walked. I have 5 acres here on hiking trails, and I went to walk, and my toes kind of curled around a root. I was in flip-flops. It had soft cushion on them, and that was it. Game over. It just, everything started again. And I put the boot back on, still in pain. And when I went back to the doctor, this foot specialist the second time, so this is my third doctor's appointment, he told me that it's like spider webs. The ligaments are like spider webs, and I keep breaking the spider webs, and for me not to move for 2 weeks. So he said crutches, and I got a little knee scooter I'm riding around on.
But he's not riding around on. That's the issue.
But I don't know. What is your prognosis, Doc? I mean, he hasn't done an MRI. He said an MRI is not going to really show us anything anyway. And what I did to my foot, a bad sprain. Multiple sprains. 2 of my toes turned black from just blood going, pooling down in there. I don't know. Am I saying too much? What do I say, Doc?
No, not at all. And so here's the thing. So first of all, I want to preface all this by saying I'm a PhD. I'm not an MD, right? So I'm not the guy to diagnose you. Certainly your primary care physician is the one to do that. However, that being said, I wind up teaching a lot of physicians how to do this diagnosing stuff. So the one thing in hearing that I would suggest, if you came to me in the office and gave me that kind of a history, is I would go back and, is there harm in doing something like a diagnostic ultrasound? So yeah, MRIs are very expensive. They're not invasive, but they're expensive tests. Whereas a diagnostic ultrasound, you can look at the soft tissue around there to see, did you actually tear something? And, if you did, what might you need to do after that point? Immobilizing something in the beginnings of something when you're hurt is a good thing, right? We want to be able to remove some of the stress off of the structure, allow things to heal and see how things are going. But if you're too immobilized, then you're going to get weaker. And, your path forward in things like physiotherapy and what you're going to have to do to rehab your ankle and just get everything moving is going to be a longer road. So, I don't want to step on the toes of your primary care doctor, but I don't think it would be, it would hurt to ask for something like a diagnostic ultrasound just to see and to rule out whether or not you had any other issues there. And I want to ask you a question because when my team, did book this and they said, hey, do you want to do this? I said, yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. I went on your Instagram and I took a look and I could notice something interesting in your Instagram photos. On one Instagram photo recently, I saw that you had a boot on your left foot.
Oh no, it's always my right foot. I don't know. Maybe the image got flipped. No, it's always been my right foot.
Yeah.
You
okay,
got.
I was going to say earlier in your Instagram there was a picture with you with a boot on your on your right foot. So I was just kind of confused there.
No, unless an image flips somehow and uploading it. I do the same picture to Instagram, Facebook, and different things. But I don't know.
Sure.
No, I've never. My left foot's great.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, my left foot's great,
Good.
and it's not my ankle. So it's all the bones. I don't know how you say, and the meat of your. I keep looking at my hand because I don't have my foot handy, but it's all the bones right there in the meat of your hand and the meat of your foot. So actually, it feels like bones are. I thought it was broken because it feels like bones are protruding at the top. It's not my ankle at all. The only ankle pain I have is from walking like Frankenstein monster and lifting up my foot awkwardly and using something, a tendon in the front of my heel, in the front of my ankle.
Yeah.
That's the only pain I have from that.
When you immobilize it, you're going to start losing some of the supporting musculature of your ankle. You're going to start losing, some of that stuff in there, which is why we don't want to keep you too immobilized for too long. Have you seen a physiotherapist yet?
No, I went to a doctor and a foot specialist twice. And I'm telling you, both times, Doc, I haven't been happy. They gave me a boot, and he said, you know how to strap this on? Yes, sir. But they didn't tell me anything. Like, they didn't say you need to wear this 24 hours and pretend it's a cast. They just gave me a boot and sent me on my way. So when when it first happened, I couldn't put any weight on it at all. Like, it hurt. I knew it was broken. It hurt to put any weight on. Now I can walk with a boot, and it's fine. I don't feel pain. Every once in a while, if I walk a lot, I'll start to feel pain, and then I stop. I sit down. But if I take the boot off, I get pain, after 10 steps, 15 steps, For sure. But okay. I don't know. So it's getting better, but I'm torn. And now you're telling me that...
He said he kept re-tearing it, is what the doctor said when he went back to the foot specialist the second time he went back. He said, you're trying too much. You took it off, and so the little spider web, he described it to him like little spider webs. And they're small and they're weak as they're healing. And you keep stretching it and bending it and re-tearing them. So it's not getting better. So you need to have no pressure for 3 weeks. So he said no pressure. Be on crutches, be on the scooter, no pressure.
And I took that the wrong way because he left the room. He said no pressure and kind of waved goodbye to me. And I laughed. I said, yeah, no pressure. Doc, I have 2 newborn babies. I have a 9-year-old daughter. I'm the breadwinner of the family. We're just coming out of a recession. Shows are coming back. I can't be immobilized. No pressure. It's a lot of pressure. But he was talking the other way. My wife had explained that to me later.
So, but the thing is, he's not doing no pressure. He has his boot on, but he's still walking on it. So he's still putting pressure on it. And I told him that he's not following doctor's orders. And he's saying because of shows, but we haven't had a show since that doctor's appointment. And he has a walk-around thing where he has to walk around a whole huge... resort that we have this weekend, and I told him you can use your scooter. You can scoot up to the people and then do your close-up magic and then scoot on away from them. It'll be fine. People get hurt all the time. I think they'll understand.
But what I was telling her is I don't have pain when I'm on my boot.
Yep.
So I don't know.
Okay. and that one's really hard for me to give you sort of a path forward on that because you're not in front of me and I can't do my own assessment that way.
Yeah.
When people have said get into a boot and get off your foot, usually it's for a reason, right? Now, if you're in one of those walking casts, it immobilizes you fairly well, and it gets a lot of the pressure off of your foot. If you're just not doing well and you're still sore, oftentimes you have to go that step further. It's the walking cast and crutches or the scooter or something like that to be able to get around. And if that's what you need to do a show, then it's something that you might have to figure out kind of how to do it. I think that a good intermediate step would be to see a physical therapist, someone who has a lot of specialization in feet, and you might need to call around to find somebody in your area and just say, have you worked with a lot of, ankle sprains, foot sprains, potential ankle breaks, things like that. And if they say no, maybe keep calling until you find one that says, yes, I do. I'm specialized in sports medicine or what have you, and have them be able to give you what you're going to be able to do to wean yourself out of the boot.
Okay.
And oftentimes there's an in-between step between, yes, you want to immobilize it and be in the boot for however many weeks, whether it's 2 to 6 weeks to let the structure heal. But as you take the boot off, it's how you're going to reintroduce your foot now to load. It's not always as simple as just take the boot off and hop on stage and do a 3-hour show pain-free. Usually there's some stuff you have to do, in the interim to be able to get that foot better. And a good qualified physical therapist that really knows what they're doing with feet could help you be that in-between step. Where I come into the picture often is when people have done the boot, they've done their healing, they've gone to therapy, they're still not getting better because they've torn something past the point of healing where you're not going to get better. And then I introduce things like orthotics and footwear and compression and taping and all the different things that might allow you to get back to things comfortably. And so I think the next step for you is really going to be the therapy part of it, so that you can get back to doing these shows as comfortably as possible.
Yeah.
Dude, you're awesome.
But you've got to stay off the foot first, and then...
But you know what? Hey, if doctor's orders are stay off the foot because they think you've torn something and it needs to heal appropriately, then it's off the foot to do it appropriately. But that doesn't mean you can't do shows. Just modify it a little bit.
Right.
It's so that you're able to do what you need to do. Because hey, you're right, man. We're all in this situation where we're coming out of a pandemic where maybe we haven't been able to earn the way we're used to.
Right.
And so it's making do of the situation.
Exactly. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. I have been, thank you.
But see, here's the other thing. When they give you...
Depending on what happened with your foot. So sometimes people will tear something in their ankle. So let's say, for instance, if you've had a really bad sprain and now you've torn some of the ligaments in your foot. For some people, they're partial tears, where once the ligament heals up and scars down sort of appropriately, you might be able to get back to normal function. And for some people, they stretch it and they tear it too much, and now we've introduced some extra mobility into your foot, and that extra mobility, sometimes you get impingement, sometimes you get other soft tissue pain, and it's things like that that might require the services of somebody like me, or depending on if your foot specialist does things like orthotic therapy and shoe therapy, they might be able to make good recommendations for you. So, for instance, getting you out of that boot into a stiffer, rockered kind of running shoe that might allow you to perform on stage more comfortably, once they've given you the green light to get out of the boot, could be the thing that keeps you as comfortable as possible.
Okay. That's a good thing.
Any injury you have, you don't realize how much you use it. But man, since March, it's been May 16th, I haven't been able to work out. I have beautiful hiking trails here. I haven't been able to be on my hiking trails. I'm sitting at my desk. I went from 13 miles a day to, on average, 13 miles a day to like 300 steps a day. It just sucks, man. It sucks.
Now, here's the good thing about, thinking about what you can do while you're injured. Because we see people like this all day in the clinic where they've got a tear in their plantar fascia, or they've got really bad osteoarthritis of their ankle, or, things where they can't run or be as active as they want to be. You could still do seated circuit, upper body weights. You could do resistance band things. There's all different kinds of ways you could still stay active and not hurt your foot. You ever heard of a hand bike?
Oh.
A hand bike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hand bike. Yeah, and so they're in Canada, they're $50 on Amazon. They're probably even they come from the States, probably even a little less expensive in the States. And you can literally sit at a desk, you put this thing on your desk, and the same pedaling motion you do with your feet, you do with your upper body. And so, case out of my own life, I tore my hamstrings aggressively 2 years ago to the point where I almost needed surgery to reattach them back to the butt bone where they come from.
Oh, goodness.
And I couldn't do any cardio. It's been 18 months of hard physio, and I'm finally just back to activity now. But the only thing I could do to keep my cardio up was a hand bike. They're the easiest things to buy. You have to ease into them like any other new activity because you don't want to wind up with, shoulder tendonitis or something like that. But certainly when you have a lower body injury, man, that can help. It can go a long way to help keep you active. Especially right now, COVID, the gyms are closed, pools are closed. I can't get in and swim. But this was a low-cost way to stay active.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a good idea. That's a very good idea. There you go, honey.
There you go. I'll get one.
There you go.
I'll get one. Yeah, I have it.
Episode worth it.
I have a gym in my backyard, and I'm like, man, I see it every day. Like I can't get in it. So here, let's get off me. We spent 20 minutes on me already. Let's get on to you. Why did you end up studying feet to begin with? How did you end up in that?
I was a patient.
Ah.
And so, I thought I was going to race professional mountain bikes in my adult life. And so I was kind of on that track where I was racing downhill mountain bikes and skiing a lot. And my only grand ambition when I was 16 years old was to own a Volkswagen Westphalia that was heated by propane so I could live in it. Certainly that's become trendy now, but it wasn't 30 years ago. And, especially if Chris Farley had anything to say about it. And it was one of those, things where, that's all I wanted to do was live in the parking lot of whatever ski or mountain bike place. Well, unfortunately, we found out that I had a fairly debilitating type of juvenile osteoarthritis that made me have my first hip reconstruction when I was 17.
Oh, my goodness.
Gosh.
Yeah, and from that, I wound up with a 2-inch leg length discrepancy. So, the surgeons did their best to save the joint, and they said, listen, we can do this surgery. It's not a replacement because at 17, your chances of walking when you're 60 is pretty low because joint replacement surgeries back then were only lasting 15 to 20 years in an active senior, and you can really only get 2. So, hey, it might last you 2 years, it might last you 10, but you're going to be able to do something. Well, that was almost 25 years ago. And yes, I've been in chronic pain every day since, but it's what I do now that allows me to manage that pain significantly. So with a 2-inch leg length discrepancy, you can believe that walking without some kind of lift to be able to make up that difference is fairly painful. And my next door neighbor just happened to be a specialist like I am now, who got me back on the bike and back to activity and back to doing things because I was really sore after the surgery because of this discrepancy. And so after a few years of working in his garage, kind of building lifts for myself, I'm like, I kind of want to do this. So I dropped out of business school 2 months before I was going to graduate.
Oh, wow.
My parents probably freaked out. And then I came to a different university where I studied undergrad in health science, a postgrad in orthotics, and went on to start a master's and subsequently a PhD in health and rehabilitation science with a minor in measurement and methods. Where, it's been 20 years, this doesn't feel like work.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good.
I'm the same way with magic, man. I love every day of it. That's what makes you a specialist, man. If you love it, it's only going to help things.
Yeah, 100%. And we get to make things with our hands that allow people to get back to the things that they want to do. And I kind of say from, really hardcore Olympians to octogenarians with arthritis, we've kind of helped that gamut of people, really specifically with certain kinds of pain and long-term metabolic disorders, stay active and healthy and do the things that they want to do, be able to work and, go shopping on the weekends and go walk around their blocks and stay gardening and doing all of that stuff. Because you said it, when you have a foot injury that makes you really sore, you really take it for granted that you can walk down the street pain-free until you can't.
Right.
Just going around the kitchen, you don't realize you have to go to that cabinet to open that and that to do that. When you're doing it on crutches, you realize those 6 steps, man, it's a lot different on crutches.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
Yep, it's a whole different thing. Yeah.
So did you say
now,
you...
getting back to what I was...
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, getting back to your foot injury, if you've been in a boot now for over a month, when I talk to you about seeing a physical therapist, I think that's really going to be a good thing, because sometimes your ankle will stiffen up because you're not moving it as much, so your calf muscle, you might lose a little bit of bulk, and you might get a little bit stiff. And so it's really common after these kinds of injuries. Your brain's really good at telling your body in an injured part, hey, stop working as well. Turn these muscles off around this area of dysfunction. And unless you do some of the rehab after, I've seen some people 15 years later wind up with some pretty chronic issues because of a major strength imbalance from being, let's say, in a boot for too long.
Well,
I'm not saying that's what's going to happen to you, but if you do the proper therapy now, there's a much less chance of that happening down the road.
Well, when they gave me the boot, he just asked if I knew how to take it on and off, and I still don't know if I'm supposed to be treating it like a cast. He just said, "Do you know how to take it on and off?" Yes, sir. My wife broke her shin, so she had one, and my wife took her boot off when she went to bed at nighttime. I was doing the same thing, and I was waking up in the morning and pained, and I could feel my heartbeat in my feet, and it hurt so bad because I unconsciously stretch my feet and stretch while I'm sleeping or turning over or whatever. And I guess I was stretching out my foot and breaking those spider webs. So now for the past week,
yeah, just about.
I've had the boot on 24 hours a day, except in the shower. Yeah.
Yeah,
because
I can't comment on that one specifically, but I would definitely talk to the right person about that. Usually those things really aren't to be worn 24 hours a day.
Okay. I'm not waking up in the middle of the night now crying.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. Just definitely double check with your primary care doctor on that one.
Okay. All right. Yeah, because it's uncomfortable to sleep in. I mean, you feel like you're Frankenstein shoe on. So did you say you had arthritis also when you were young?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I ended up having really bad hip arthritis in one hip.
The hip arthritis, okay.
I had that first reconstruction at 17. Both my hips need to be replaced. I'm 43. I'm just too young to do it. So I lose as much weight as I can. I stay as active as I can. Having a daily movement practice is one of the most important things you can do when it comes to this kind of stuff. And, if I don't go for a 5-kilometer walk every day, irrespective of the other activity I've done that day, a couple of days in a row, and I'm feeling it. Motion is a really positive thing when you have arthritis. But it's hard in the beginning because it can hurt.
Right.
And keeping it moving is one of the best things that you really can't do.
Well, the reason I brought up arthritis because your people sent over some fact sheet about you and some information on you, and it said that you work with people that have arthritis in their feet. I never thought about it, arthritis in your feet, but I mean, I've heard of it in your hands and your shoulders and joints, but feet, is that just as common as everything else?
It is, and it's actually, research shows that it's one of the more debilitating types of arthritis, mainly because, it's really hard to make those compensations at the level where you're putting all your load through the ground. And so big toe osteoarthritis, ankle osteoarthritis, and arthritis in the middle part of your foot are the things that we deal with on a daily basis.
Wow.
And so for people who, women specifically that have really big bunions, it isn't uncommon that they wind up with arthritis later in life. And so being able to move that toe joint appropriately when you've lost some of the cartilage in between the bones, it becomes a bit more challenging. And certainly staying active, it can become quite challenging. So there's lots of stuff that we can do with people. And I'm very much a less is more fan when it comes to the style of treatment that we offer. So I often start with the less aggressive stuff, moving it to more aggressive only if we need to.
Yeah, my mom has bunions, and she said she prayed real hard when she was pregnant that I wouldn't get bunions, and luckily I don't have them. But she said that she's had hers, they tried to shave them or something, and she said it didn't work, and they're as bad as ever, and they still hurt. Is there, I mean, she tries to get shoes for it and things, but is there something else she can do as well?
Yeah, most definitely. So pain from bunions come from two different ways. One is because they become so large, and if your footwear isn't appropriately fit, just that pressure from the shoe on the bunion is going to cause discomfort. So if she takes her shoes off and that bunion is just big and red and angry, then you know that there's just too much compression from the shoe around that bone. And so a bunion really is just the irregular position of two regular shaped bones. Okay? And so the first thing you can do is appropriately fit, footwear. And so taking her to a specialty store that really knows what they're doing. So for instance, New Balance in women's come from a 2A width, which is a narrow, a medium, which is a B, a wide that's a D, and an extra wide that's a 2E. Okay? Now, not all stores, the average store might carry one or two widths. Okay? They're definitely going to carry one. They might carry two. Only really good specialty stores carry all four because it's just more expensive.
Right.
So if I look at our most popular, I don't know if this was part of the package that Jamie sent you over, but part of our business is that we own two really big shoe stores here in London, Ontario. One's a family shoe store, one's a running specific store. And so for the models that we have that come in widths, we might carry that in one or two colors, and we might carry 5 widths, and then we might carry, a couple of models of that whole thing. So you can understand that it's thousands of dollars of inventory that you need to be able to cover that breadth of stuff. And so not all stores do. And so you need to find a place that's local to you that you can bring her in, that knows how to fit appropriately, that carries all of the widths so that she can be fit. The next reason is, maybe there's something like osteoarthritis that's set in. Maybe there's some impingement happening in the joint. And that's where someone who does custom foot orthotics, like a podiatrist, a chiropodist, a podorthist, down where you are, might be a great person to take her to help alleviate some of that joint pain that she's having.
Cool. Thanks.
So
pass that on.
Yeah, no problem.
So what are some shoe mistakes? You watch people in the mall wearing shoes like those. I just saw a girl the other day in a Walmart. It was like a flip-flop thong type of looking thing, and that thing had a 4-inch heel on both of them. Not a heel, but like the pad of the shoe was 4 inches. I don't know. I remember those being popular in the early 2000s.
From the front to the back? It's just like...
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It had a big pad. I mean, do you look at some shoes and you're like, oh, no, honey, you shouldn't be wearing those?
I can't go to the gym anymore because, the watching that treadmill section, it just freaks me out. And that's what I do. I look at the way people run and walk all day, right?
Oh.
So I think the biggest mistake that we see in footwear is people thinking that they have a shoe size. Okay? So what we'll tell people is you don't have a shoe size, you have a foot shape. And what you need to do is figure out how that foot shape matches in terms of size. So every company makes their shoes differently, okay? There's no universal standard in how shoes are sized. So you could be a size and a half different between a Nike and a New Balance, depending on the model and the width and all of that stuff.
Wow.
And so even within a company, different models are going to fit you differently. So some will fit really, really wide. Some are going to fit a little bit narrower. So again, getting around the fact that no, you don't have a shoe size, you have a foot shape. And what you need to figure out is how your foot shape fits that shoe. So we get a lot of people who come in and say, oh, I've always been a size 7. So I'm looking for a size 7 shoe. We're like, hey, let's pull out the branded device and let's actually measure your foot and let's see what the actual size is. And it's an 8.5.
Wow.
Okay, and like, I've never been an 8.5. I'm like, great. Hey, do your toes go numb? Yeah, they do. They go numb and tingly. Do you run? Yep, I run. You ever got a butt toenail? As a matter of fact, I do.
Wow.
And right away, you know that people kind of get locked in because over time, your foot changes. So not only can you have just age-related foot shape changes, so as you age, naturally your foot might get a little bit longer as the load and stress on the ligaments relaxes everything a little bit. But after things like injury, so if you had a really bad ankle sprain where you've torn some of those restraining ligaments and now your foot can collapse more, which lengthens it a bit, it changes. Pregnancy, Your first pregnancy is usually where you see most of the change, but the research will say it's as little as half a size. It's as much as a size and a half with your first pregnancy.
All right. Well, hold on one second. Natalie, did you notice?
I didn't notice a change. I noticed it at the end of I just had twins last September, and at the end of that pregnancy, I felt like my shoes weren't fitting right, but they seem fine now.
She also had such swelling issues with the pregnancy of twins.
Oh, yeah.
That she could barely get her tennis shoes on at some points.
Right.
And we didn't buy new shoes. You don't go, common people, you would, you're the professional, but you don't think. You go to the maternity section and you buy, bigger dresses. You don't buy bigger shoes.
Right.
You just don't think about that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we carry a slip-on shoe from New Balance specifically for that reason, so that you can easily, in those last few months, where sometimes tying up the shoes is a little bit difficult, that people really appreciate, because it's easy to get them off and on.
See, some women don't have loving husbands like me. I was on the floor tying her shoes up for her in those last months.
Yes,
See, there you go, man. Yeah, that's no problem. And so, to that end, my wife went up a half a size with our first pregnancy, and she's pretty much stayed there the whole time.
Okay.
So
she was really sad because she had some really nice shoes and she had to throw out
Aww.
or donate.
Yeah, that's awful. That's no fun.
So as far as just shoes straight across the board, those shoes that have each individual toe that you slip in and it's sewn in or whatever, I don't know what they're called, but they're pitched for runners.
They're called Vibram 5 Fingers.
Okay, they are ugly as sin. Yeah. People like the other ones they're clogs. What are those with the holes all in them?
Oh, the Crocs.
Crocs. Ugly as sin.
Crocs.
But I'm not talking about fashion. I'm not talking about how ugly those things are. What should everybody be wearing? If fashion's not a thing.
That's a great question. So, I hear that people ask me all the time, what's the one best shoe, right? But there isn't.
Okay.
There really isn't. I can take two people with the exact same feet, and they're going to wind up with drastically different shoes about what's comfortable. So the biggest predictor of how things are going to work well for you is going to be comfort. And so what's comfortable for one person isn't going to be comfortable for another person, And so depending on what you're doing in the shoe can also make a really big difference. So for instance, those barefoot shoes, those toe shoes you were talking about, right? Some people, when they use those things as a drill shoe, as a training shoe, where they're doing some stuff in the gym with them, it's really purpose-driven, they go to it slowly, things could go really, really well. I've had other patients who have said, okay, I'm going to go from my regular orthotic and running shoe to going to one of those things right away. I'm going to go out and run 8K in them and see how it goes, and then wind up back in my office with stress fractures.
Oh, gosh.
And so it really depends on the usage, and it depends on your individual tolerance to tissue stress. Some people can just beat themselves up despite doing everything wrong, wearing the craziest things on their feet, and they're never going to get hurt. Those are the people who can go from couch to running a half marathon and, not eat well and have 20-year-old shoes and they're fine. And you've got other people at the opposite end of the spectrum that despite doing everything right, following good training advice and brand new gear and everything's good, they're going to get injured no matter what. And their ability to handle cyclical soft tissue stress or the load, the demand of what they're doing is just less. Most people are going to be somewhere in the middle of that spectrum. The question that you have to answer for yourself is, which side do you lie more towards? Are you that person that can get away with doing a lot more and you're not sore the next day, you haven't seen many injuries? Or are you that person that tends to always get injured? And if you are, that can tell you from a footwear perspective where you might want to start and what you might want to shy away from.
Okay. Interesting.
Well, this is my first foot injury I've ever had in my life. I don't know. It's eye-opening, that's for sure. A broken bone and a bad sprain. I keep hearing people say, oh, you have a bad sprain. That can be worse than a broken bone. Oh, wouldn't you have torn ligaments with a broken bone as well?
You can. You certainly can. So it depends. If you break the bone sometimes, if they set it or surgically set it or, what have you, that it's going to heal up, and the ligaments, the things that restrain and keep you from moving, haven't stretched, they haven't torn, hopefully, and then you maintain some of that integrity. But if you tear the ligaments and stretch everything out, which then allows you to move more, and you get impingement and some dysfunction because of that, that's kind of what they're referencing there. So it can go both ways, though. So there's never a hard and fast rule that you should break your ankle more so than spraining it.
People just keep telling me that. So
more folklore there.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. Is that a wives' tale, or I didn't know? And the other thing, the doctor told me that my foot issue was like broken ribs. There's nothing you can do for it but wait for it to heal. So I didn't know if that was like a wives' tale type thing. I mean, you're the doc about the therapy and the orthopedics and all that stuff. So I don't know. Moving on. Foot question for you. My brother had bone spur issues. That's not a broken bone, or is that a fragment of a bone? Is that a growth? What is that?
Do you happen to know where the bone spur is?
It was on his heel, I think.
It's on his heel. Yeah. Okay. So oftentimes heel spurs grow because this thing called your plantar fascia, which is a big broad band of connective tissue, it starts on your heel bone and it fans out through your arch into your toes. And when you have too much strain on that, when your arch flattens and then it's just lots of pulling on the heel, essentially a little bit of bone remodels in that area. And you get what on x-ray looks like a little spur. Now, most people think that because of the pain associated with them, that they grow down like a thumbtack. It doesn't actually grow down in that direction, but it grows out like it's pointing towards your toes. And for some people, those spurs exist, and you'll never know about them, and they'll never cause you a day's worth of injury or harm. Wow. And for other people, they can become symptomatic and uncomfortable. So to that end, if he's having a lot of discomfort with his spur, then offloading it through some really simple stuff you can get that puts more pressure in your arch and takes some of the load off of your heel that you can buy at the drugstore can often work with that. If he's waking up with morning pain and has lots of pain after he's been sitting for a while and goes to get back up again, that can sometimes be the symptoms of something called plantar fasciitis. And to that end, getting a proper diagnosis and seeking out the appropriate therapy in that case could give him some good relief as well.
Well, that was my next question, so that's awesome how that locked up. One of your books is all about plantar fasciitis plan. So the plantar fasciitis plan is the name of the book. What is that in layman's terms? What is plantar fasciitis in layman's terms? Is that the bone spur?
No, it's what he said.
No, plantar fasciitis is that broad band of connective tissue on the bottom part of your feet.
Okay.
It's muscle, it's not the ligament, it's fascial tissue, which is a connective tissue. And it's a super debilitating issue for a lot of people. It's what I spend almost half my day dealing with. And so I've seen thousands of cases over 20 years of doing this. And the problem with plantar fasciitis is that there isn't one way to get it, and there isn't one proven way to treat it. So there's all these different kinds of therapies that are out there. There's injections, and there's shockwave therapy, and there's surgery, and there's orthotics, and there's physio, and night splints, and PRP injections, and home-based therapy programs. And I could keep going, but I'll stop. And what we did with that book is we kind of put together a simple step-by-step plan that once you've had proper diagnosis, because again, we don't diagnose stuff over the internet, what you can do, some simple steps you can do at home to break out of the cycle of half healing and re-tearing that makes you have significant morning pain when you take your first 10 steps. And it's the method that we work our patients through when they come and see us face-to-face.
And is that available on your website? Is that available at your store?
It's available. Yeah, so it's available on Amazon. You can find it on any of the Amazon ones just by searching plantar fasciitis plan. You'll see, or Colin Dombroski either way, or you can link to it directly through our website, stuffaboutfeet.com, where we go on and we talk about a bunch of different things from plantar fasciitis to strengthening to how to pick appropriate shoes for your foot type, all that kind of stuff.
All right. So do you have stuffaboutfeet.com and .ca or just .ca?
I believe there's both.
Okay, cool. The handout I had got .ca, so I just want to make sure everybody goes to the right place.
I have a question, and it might be the dumbest question you've ever heard, but I'm going to ask it because I don't know the answer. When I was a baby, I got stuck in my heels for different reasons while I was still at the hospital. And the first thing that, just like Julian did, the first thing...
Stuck in your heel. I thought you were stuck in a pair of heels as a baby.
No.
You had an injection.
And yes, needles in my heels. And the first thing that starts hurting on my feet are my heels. And I didn't know if that's like a tie to that, because our one of our 9-month-old twins, he had to get his blood sugar checked for 24 hours straight every 2 hours, for the first 24 hours. And he still has, you can see where he got pricked a couple of the spots with the needle. So I'm wondering if that's going to hurt him in the future too, or if that's just my brain made that connection and that's just the dumbest connection ever. Does that make sense?
I wouldn't say that it's, it's a perfectly legitimate question, and I would say now it's probably too early to tell, but I'm betting that he's going to be just fine.
Okay, all right. Cool.
Yeah, he does still have a little hole. I mean, you can hold his foot up and see where they jabbed him over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
How old is he now? How long ago was that?
9 months old. That was last September.
He's 9 months old. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's something you could bring up to your pediatrician for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because I know that happened when I was a baby to me, and my heels hurt first. When my feet start hurting, like after a long day, it's my heels that hurt first, and maybe that's just how I'm standing. But I didn't know if that had a connection at all with getting stabbed in the heel.
Especially if it's both heels. From there, a lot of people, from increased strain on the bottoms of their feet, their heels are going to be the first things that are going to hurt.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. There you go.
So also on your website, you talk about foot strength, and you've written a book on that subject. But I've never seen a foot exercise machine at the gym. What are you talking about there? And another question, if our feet seem fine and healthy, do we need to do some kind of exercise to keep them that way?
I think it would start just by saying, do your feet work like feet? Is the number one question that I ask a lot of my people who come in. And you'd be surprised with the number of people who can't do some simple things like curling their toes all their way down and keeping them in that position while working a full ankle range of motion, or being able to take their toes and stand them apart from one another. So like if you took your fingers right now and spread them apart as far as you can, like you were going to palm a basketball,
right?
Can you do that motion with your toes, with your feet? Are you able to move them independent of one another? Can you move your big toes separately from your little toes? Can you keep your little toes on the ground, just move your big toes? Do you have control over those things neurologically? And if you don't, that's where that book, the Strengthening Plan book, comes in. It's just trying to make that foot-brain connection again and get your feet working like feet to start.
So in the magic world... In the magic world, there's a guy named Greg Irwin who does hand exercises. He was a pianist, and his hands were getting tired playing these classical pieces over and over, so he developed this whole exercise program, and that sounds like what that is, but for the feet. Because I didn't know the range of motion that I'm supposed to be able to move my toes independently. I can move my big toe and the other four, and that's the only two movements I can do. I can't move my ring finger toe or my middle finger toe or my pinky toe individual. I didn't know I was supposed to be able to do that.
Like, usually it would be you'd move toes kind of 2 through 5 together.
Okay.
They all work with the same extensor and flexor tendon. And then, your big toe independently of that. So if you go on stuff about feet, you can see a few of those different exercises and get an idea of what they should look like. We talk a lot about ranges of motion, specifically at your ankle. A lot of the time we see clients who come in the door with anything from plantar fasciitis to pain under the balls of their feet, just like an achy, general pain in the front part underneath the ball of their foot. And when we do some basic muscle testing, some basic range of motion testing, we can see that their ankle joint isn't moving as well as it should. And oftentimes that's coming because their calf muscles have tightened up. Or sometimes it's coming even from higher dysfunction because they've got, really weak hips and things are being, rotated, and so their hamstrings are tightening, and that's where it's coming from. But to that end, it's restricting them at their ankle. When you're restricted at your ankle, your body is really good at being able to compensate for that by out-toeing your feet so you kind of walk like a duck, turning them in a bit more and raising up your heels raising up your heels faster than you should. That all results on more load going on those little bones, the vasculature, the nerves, and you can wind up with numb and tingly toes. You can wind up with pain in the balls of your feet. And so changing something as simple as that ankle range of motion and getting more flexible can sometimes be the easy, low-hanging fruit to making those little foot pains and strains go away. And that's what we talk about in the book.
And that's called the Foot Strength Plan. Is that on Amazon as well?
It's on Amazon as well, yeah.
Awesome. Well, we were talking about the magic and moving your fingers and all that and the exercises. In my sideshow days, you wouldn't approve of this, I know. But I did something called the ladder of razor sharp swords. I don't know if you ever saw this, but you demonstrate how sharp the swords are by cutting vegetables, cutting whatever, and you lay them across so you're stepping on the blade and you walk up a ladder of razor sharp swords. To prepare for that, I have to toughen my feet. So walking barefoot all summer is nothing for me. I live out in the country. I'm used to it. But barefoot, good, bad? What are the opinions of that?
Barefoot in the right instances, really good. Barefoot in the wrong instances, really, really bad. So if you're diabetic and you've lost protective sensation in your foot, going barefoot in an environment where you don't know whether you're going to step on a small stone or do something that could wind up being a real problem down the road, that is not somewhere you want to go. Mm-hmm. But being barefoot in other instances can be very helpful. Now, that being said, not being active for a while and then going for a 5-kilometer run on the beach in really soft sand is one of the easiest ways to hurt yourself.
Right.
So, like anything, moderation is going to be a little bit of it. I kind of like to say that, anybody who tells you that you should only be barefoot or only be in shoes, kind of don't listen to them. It's that middle ground where, it's going to be good for you, a little bit of it at a time. It's when the people are telling you that, shoes are the collective evil of the world, making everyone's arches, weak and tired and sore. Those are the ones where I get a little bit suspect.
So what do you think about women wearing high heels, especially those thin spike high heels? Is that just if you get the right fit for the shoe, then you're fine? Or is that like, oh, geez, you're really messing up your foot wearing high heels like that?
It's half of why I have a job.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I knew the answer to that one. I was just waiting. You walked into that one. I knew the answer to that one.
Yeah. Heels are,
well, I would think that would be more of an ankle thing because you see a lot of people who don't know how to walk in heels and like they're hurting their ankles. But as far as feet go, I wasn't sure. Okay.
That's really like a feet to your lower back kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
I kind of, again, that goes back to that moderation question. If you're going to wear something that's really nice, if you're going to go out for dinner for, an evening, and you're going to sit most of the time, and again, you're not at high risk of things like ulceration and, all that kind of stuff, then you know what? You could be just fine. If you're a retail worker and you spend 10 hours a day or 6-7 hours a day standing on your feet in heels, we're probably going to meet at some point in your professional life.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Go.
So to that end, again, a little bit can be fun and good and all of that stuff, but all day, every day is probably not a good idea.
Right, because they're so cute. The shoes.
Exactly.
All right, Doc. She asked a stupid...
You wear them out to the dinner, and then you come home and take them off.
Perfect.
It's the people that wear them to work 40 hours a week that really do the damage. So she just asked a dumb question, Doc. Go ahead.
Well, let's go there another way. It's the people that wear really good stuff all week, and then they put on that really sexy pair of heels to go to a wedding, and then they dance in them for 4 hours. That's an easy way to get hurt too. So when you think about that, it's whenever you change your load super fast in one direction or another is an area that can get you hurt quickly.
Gotcha.
So if you go from one thing to the drastic opposite of that thing overnight, yeah, there's a good chance that you might be pretty sore.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, we got about 10 minutes left. She just asked a dumb question. I have a dumb question, and when am I going to talk to a foot expert? So in my days of doing sideshow stuff, back when I was 18 years old, I'm the same age as you, I'm 43, learning how to walk on broken glass, the guy told me it's okay if you get cut and glass gets in you because glass has a way of working itself out. It'll just come out.
Nope.
Nope. Tell me about this, because I'm listening to a sideshow carny, and you're the expert, so that's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, case in point, my wife still has a piece of glass in her foot from 25 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
That they said if it's not bothering her, don't take it out because you're going to have more problems with the scar tissue. We had a woman in just 2 weeks ago. One of my associates had a woman in. We thought she had a fibroid mass in her plantar fascia, like a little benign, really not much to worry about, like lump of tissue. We send everyone back to their family doctor to ultrasound them to make sure, because sometimes they can be worse than that. Turns out, piece of glass stuck in her foot from years ago. I think she said it was over 20 years ago. And, is going to have it removed. So, no, glass just doesn't work its way out.
See, I'm the guy that goes to Cancun or goes to Vegas, and I'm in flip-flops, and, it's 10 o'clock at night. I'll take my flip-flops off like a girl in heels, and I'll just walk barefooted because the ground's warm and it feels good. And everybody's like, aren't you worried about the glass? No, my buddy told me it'll work its way out. Thanks, Doc. I have been an idiot for all these years.
I don't feel so bad about my question anymore.
So, you're welcome. So, tell me, I don't know, you can't tell names probably, but your Olympian story, getting Olympians back in shape. Can you tell me a little bit about just the story? You don't have to give me names.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't tell you much about the story because, in telling you the story, you can kind of figure out who they are.
Oh, okay.
Without explicit permission, I kind of can't. But in general, like in generalities, it was I've taken people who have habitual stress fractures from the just amount of training that they have to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the time, these athletes go through a lot of training. They don't get a lot of recovery. And for some people, those little bones in your feet, especially if you're doing a sport where you wind up having, lots of repetitive load on your foot. So we've taken people with these repetitive stress injuries of the bones in their feet, and we've gotten them back to training. And without what we do, they keep getting these kinds of fractures. So, that's how we've helped some Olympians get back to it. The other things will be, making devices small enough to be able to fit into track spikes and, stuff that's going to be light. Because at the end of the day, small amounts of weight, when tenths of a second are the thing that can make a difference between a gold and a silver, we want to make sure that they're as comfortable as possible, allowing them to perform the way that they need to and want to in something that's going to give them that competitive edge.
All right, so we have listeners in 27 different countries. Can other countries come to you, or are you only able to help Olympians in Canada?
Only if they're in Canada. Yeah, so, if they come to Canada, happy to help.
Oh, man, we need some gold medals. I'm going to send some people to you.
You just got to go to Canada. That's all it is.
I didn't know if that's, against country honor. I don't know. You're making them too good. Doc, you are awesome. Thank you for everything. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Do you want to go into, we have about 6 minutes left. The only other thing that I didn't talk about was insoles for shoes. You do a lot in that. Is that overhyped? Every drugstore in America sells them.
Yeah.
What do you think?
This is it. So, when it comes to orthotics, and so the insoles that you put into your shoe, we can kind of look at it two different ways, or I very much look at it in two different ways. Number one is that, for what I do, which is the medical version of these things. So if you have diabetes and you're at risk of a foot ulcer, okay, these things can be the difference sometimes between getting a really bad ulcer that becomes infected and you just go down that spiral where you end up losing your foot.
Oh,
okay?
gosh.
And so the consequences of that are far-reaching. And so being able to get into a proper shoe and orthotic combo once you've healed from an ulcer, reduces your rate of re-ulceration. And with diabetes being the level that it is around the globe, that's a real issue. Same thing with osteoarthritis. If I can keep you active and do the things that you want to do, or at least do more of them in less pain, and your health-related quality of life goes up, that's a win, right?
Right.
Where orthotics get overhyped are when people who get them who just don't need them. All right?
Okay.
So just because your benefits cover orthotics doesn't mean that you're, in quotation marks, entitled to orthotics. It just means that, hey, if you need them, you might be covered for them. And that's where we see misuse happen. So there are scary people on the internet telling you that, only 0.1001% of people in the world need orthotics. That's just not true. If you look at just osteoarthritis and diabetes in North America alone, it's like 10% of the population, not 0.001% of the population. So at the end of the day, getting them for the right reason can be life-changing. But getting them for no reason, there's not really a lot of good evidence to suggest that doing these things to prevent injuries down the road is really effective across all the different foot types. Because here's the thing. There are lots of people who have pancake flat feet who are fine. They're Ironman triathletes and they've never had a damn problem in their life. And there are people with completely, quote-unquote, normal-looking feet that have nothing but pain and problem. So in that regard, structure doesn't always dictate the function and the injury. If you have a particularly high arch, a particularly gnarly instep, and you have other issues with fit, an over-the-counter device can help your shoes fit better. So those things that you can buy at the drugstore for $30 to $50 can sometimes make a really big difference in making your shoes fit better. And if a better fitting shoe allows you to have less strain on your foot, it means that you might have less discomfort if you're, working in a grocery store at the end of the day, if you're in work boots all day. You can imagine wearing a steel shank and a steel toe boot on a concrete floor for 10 to 12-hour shifts does not make for happy feet.
Right.
So, sometimes those over-the-counter solutions you can buy in the drugstore is the gateway. It's the starting point to figure out whether or not you need to come and see somebody like me. Because if you can put that in over-the-counter and you feel great, then awesome. That's a really good start with things. And if you do it and it makes you worse, or if you do it and you don't see any benefit, then that might be where you might want to take that next step in figuring it out if you still have foot pain. So for me, I don't like to take those people who are doing really well with something that's basically over the counter and then have to give them something 10 times the cost. For me, you need to get 10 times the value.
Right. Cool.
You are the best. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this tonight. Everybody, check him out at stuffaboutfeet.ca. Doc, thank you for everything. The plantar fasciitis plan and the foot strength plan are both on Amazon, both probably on your website as well, correct?
For sure.
You are fantastic. Thank you. Hey, stay on the line, and I'm going to do a couple plugs. Stay on the line, and we'll wrap everything up.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for having me.
Next week is episode 52 of our first year of the podcast. Year 1 is in the books. We are just getting started, though. Make sure you subscribe and don't miss a single issue episode. We started bugging our friends a year ago and saying, hey, please be on our podcast. Mm-hmm. Now we're booked through September. We have over 60 people on our waiting list, and big things are in the works. And tonight on Jewel TV, they're airing episode 14 from season 2 called The Twins' First Shows. Jewel TV is on Roku, Amazon Fire, the Apple TV app, the Jewel TV app, and tons of other places. It's in over 100 million households. All you have to do is look for it. See you next week. Today's episode of the podcast is sponsored by Express Copy and Graphics. Mention promo code Wes Iseli to get 10% off. Their website is expresscopy.com. That's XPRESS-COPY.com. They do it all. Copies, banners, signs, vehicle wraps, promo items, practically anything you need printed, they can do it for you. These guys are great. Check them out. Check us out online at wesiseli.com and patreon.com/Wes_Iseli for behind-the-scene videos, blooper videos, never-before-seen footage, discounts on merchandise, magic trick tutorials, and more. That's Wes Iseli, spelled Wesiseli.